All right, folks, we're back today to start talking about the second part of 1 Point Perspective. But before we get started with that, I want to talk to you about a couple things supply-wise. What I was using on the first video was an ebony pencil. I was using that to get the lines really dark so that everybody could see everything. But it really doesn't erase as easy. Get a really good, nice shading out of it. You can get a really good light to dark ratio in your value. But I find that sketching with a hard pencil, an H pencil, HB is a number 2 pencil, so this is just slightly harder. You can get your sketch done without having all the dark lines, and as you can see, you're a little bit more successful in pulling out what you draw in if you're using a lighter touch or a harder pencil. Now, another thing is these two here are probably my favorite erasers to use for any type of pencil drawing. You got your plain pink pearl eraser, and then this is a white vinyl eraser, and there's a few companies that make them. They're not real expensive. Very nice to use for this application. Also, this pencil topper here is a white vinyl one, just like the one that I have here. Only you get a little bit more control out of this thing if I'm trying to clean up edges. And if that isn't enough, I have 3 different types of eraser pencils here. We have the one that's more like a China marker. We have the eraser pencil with the brush to push off the eraser. And then we have one that's more like a mechanical pencil, only it's an eraser. So, moving into what we're doing here. Actually, let's talk about one other thing, colored pencils. We'll be talking about this later on. I prefer to use Prismacolors, but they're kind of expensive. They are really nice. Prang is a really good name brand, and Crayola as well. All of them will work. They have very good saturation of color. They don't have a whole lot of issues with the pencil's quality or the finished quality of what you get with the work. So let's jump into this, because what we talked about on the first video is how to create an interior space, put things on the walls, and then start to put simple rectangular prisms or cubes within that space. So I went ahead and I've started a drawing here that kind of gets us to where we left off last time. And we're going to start talking about how to make these 3D forms into actual objects. So let's start with this one in the middle here. If we are wanting to turn this into, let's say, a table, we're going to turn this into like a banquet hall. I'm going to start cutting pieces out of here. What I did is I just put in a parallel line to show the thickness of my table. And then I'm going to put a parallel vertical line on either side to show where the legs of my table are. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to pull out this bottom part that I no longer need. Now, we already look like a table, but there's one thing we've got to do here to get this to look more realistic. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring a convergent line from the bottom of each leg. And then we're going to put a parallel in. And what that's going to do is that's going to show us the side plane of this table leg. All right, so now we have a table sitting in the middle of the room. Let's start talking about how we can take more than one. We have a square and a rectangle here. We've stacked them on top of each other. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I do with any other exterior. I just am using 2 shapes that are connected to each other. So I'm going to start to drop my convergent lines in from every corner, inside and out. So this inside corner here, I don't have to travel through the object to draw a line. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do so. And then I have my 2 at the top here. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn these 2 objects into a chair. So now that I've put this in here, the easiest way to go about this is to start at the bottom and work your way up. So I'm going to put a parallel line. Here's my 2 convergent lines. Between those 2 convergent lines, that's the front face of that object. Between these 2, it's straight across. I'm going to do the same thing here. Then I'm going to go up again because that's what this one does. And then this one goes horizontally, so we're going to do the same thing with the back thickness of the chair. So you can see how we've got our cube and our rectangular prism. Now we're going to start to clean this up along the edges here. That's why I tell you to always make sure these convergent lines stay light, because you have to pull them out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show the thickness of my chair by putting a parallel here and a parallel here. I'm going to clean up this corner a little bit here as well. So now, all that's left at this point is vertical lines to show the different planes of the legs of the chair. All right, so we can see this leg here has two facets. This one and this one, we only see one. And we also are going to have to see that fourth leg there as well. So what we're going to do first is we're going to remove the parts of this cube that we no longer need. Then I'm going to line up to the corner right here on this back leg and do the same thing I did on the table, where I show the inside part of that leg. And then over here, we're seeing the side plane. So we have to have a horizontal line to show the one that's facing us and our parallel. So now you can see how that chair is developed. The only thing that looks weird is that we have to be able to show where that other table leg is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up to this bottom of this leg right here. I'm going to put a little mark right there. And then I'm going to come from this corner down. Going to put our parallel in, go to the point, and put our parallel in. So now we see all four legs of that chair. We can start, now that we have this, to turn this into something more chair-like, but this is the general idea of how we're going to get this, and this works in any position. I can come over here under the table. I'm going to make this guy bigger because he's closer to us. I'm going to start with my same square. Let's go ahead and use our ruler for the part that we're actually going to be able to see here. And we're going to put a rectangle on top of it again, just like we did on the last one. Now, that's not an issue that we're running up in front of this other rectangular prism, because that is going to be back behind the chair anyway. And this is just another method that we can use to create depth in a composition, is overlapping. So now my chair is going to sit in front of that object back here. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other chair, where I come from every corner with my convergent lines. Inside and out. This is an inside corner here, but it's the outside corner of that shape. All right, and then we're going to start with our parallels again. This one's straight up and down here between these two convergent lines, so I'm going to do the same here. Between these two convergent lines, it's straight across, so I'm going to follow that. Then I'm going to go vertical, because between these two here, it's a vertical line. And lastly, we have our horizontal for the top. All right, let's go ahead and clean that up real quick. Now we're keeping in mind right now, I'm doing this for illustration purposes, but we wouldn't see this part of the chair because it's up underneath the table. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish it off the same way we did the other one. And drawing through allows us to show where these legs are going to sit in space. because we're only going to see that much of it, but we're still going to see this chair leg right here sticking out from underneath the table. We're going to clean out where the table sits in front of the chair, and we're going to clean out this gap right here in between. So the last thing I'm going to do here with the back part of this chair is I'm going to show the thickness of this leg. And then I'm also going to have to do the same thing I did last time, where I'm going to figure out where the bottom of this leg sits so I can come over here and show it here. I'm going to make this convergent because that's the side plane. And we're going to drop this parallel in. So there's our chair sitting at the table. And what we would also do is clean up everything that we wouldn't see through the table. We want to draw through because we want everything to be in the right spot. But there's our chair sitting at the table. And guys, this works in any position. This guy's the easiest here. We're going to stick another one right at the end of the table, and we're looking at the back of this chair. So all we're really going to see here, let's get our rectangle in because we always start with the face. All right, we would no longer see the table right here because the chair is blocking it. But we would see just a little bit of the legs of the chair. Run our parallel across here. Parallel to this. Clean this out. And show the thickness of the leg by using a convergent line and a parallel. This guy over here is almost in the center of our vision, so we will not see much of him, and that'll be a pretty severe angle on the bottom of that. So there we go, guys. There is another chair sitting at the table. The last thing we need for that is the thickness of the top of the chair, because we don't want it to look like it's paper thin. So we're going to come from our top 2 points of the rectangular prism and then put our parallel in. There's our chair sitting down here. So this actually allows you to take objects and start to turn them. All right, let's take a look at the stuff on the wall here real quick, and then I'm gonna come back and show you how to do something a little more complex than that. Over here in this doorway, right now it just kind of looks like it's painted on. If we put a doorknob right there, it makes more sense. But if we want to make that an open doorway, I'm going to line up this corner and make horizontal lines, because what we're doing is we're turning this into a floor space. And on the floor, it's either horizontal or it's convergent. So by doing that, and then we're going to create, by using this horizontal line, a wall that's parallel to this one. Ceiling, wall, floor. And then I can take this out of here as well. So now we've got a doorway going back into space. On these windowsills, we would see a thickness to them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come from each corner. This is kind of a modification of our interior perspective. I'm going to come from each corner with a convergent line. And then we're going to put our parallels in. There's that one. There's that one. That one. And the last one. Connect this guy up right here and then clean everything up. So now we have a thickness to the windowsill. I can go ahead and I can put my sash in here. I'm going to start in the middle of this thickness here and come over and do it again. And I'm going to bring this down and across. give it the thickness that it needs here. And essentially what we've done there is we've created a window sash. So I can put a little, now it starts to look more like we can put another one up here. I'm just going to sketch this in so you don't have to watch me do all that work. And there's our window. Same thing over here, but now it's on this wall over here. It's either vertical or it's convergent. So if we are looking at the back surface facing us, which we are in this windowsill, I'm going to start with that and that. And I'm going to draw right where this is. Even though we don't see that window back there, this would come all the way down. And then what we do is line up this corner and this one to the point to create our thickness of our windowsill over here. So let's talk about the last thing, how to start getting something a little more complex. Let's say a bookshelf where you have an interior in it. I'm going to start from this back corner here and draw down. And then I'm going to draw straight across right here to create our back rectangle of a bookcase. So this wall, that's the wall down there. To get the floor of it, I'm going to have to line up to that point and to this corner and draw a convergent line. So now it looks like we have an opening inside of this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a horizontal line here. I'm going to draw a horizontal line here. And then I'm going to line those up to the point on either side. Bring this back. Bring this back. So there's our shelves, but we have to show a little bit of thickness to those shelves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line that drops straight down here and here. And then I'm going to come from the end of that line. It doesn't have to be very thick at all. We're just showing the thickness of the board on our shelf. So here, last step will be to clean up where we no longer see that back corner for the shelf. Now, another thing I like to do is right now it looks paper thin around the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put parallel lines in here. There is a vertical. Let's get us convergent in here. Notice that I'm putting it back behind the chair. We want that object to sit behind the chair. I'm going to put a thickness here. And lastly, across the top. We go through and we clean that up because we no longer see the edges of that shelf there in that area. And you can see how we now have a bookcase sitting here in the middle of our, or on the side of our room as well. So this is where we want to get, is to where we can start to manipulate these rectangular prisms and put multiple ones together to create objects within the space. Any questions, let me know. Feel free to give me a holler. We'll see you soon.